A bill was recently introduced into the Hawaii legislature that would ban peer-to-peer car sharing platforms from operating within Hawaii, Turo included. Now, if this passed, this would truly be a worst case scenario for anybody that operates their fleet out of Hawaii. But I also think that it could be a really dangerous precedent that other states could also look to do as well. So in this video, what I'm going to be breaking down is the details of this bill, what all Turo hosts can do to make sure that this does not move forward, and some of the things that you need to be keeping an eye on. So let's get started. Now, full disclosure here that this isn't a new bill, at least not new as in the last couple of days. This was released and announced into the Hawaii legislature back in February, so it has been in the pipeline for a few months. Now, as far as why I haven't made about it so far, to be honest, I don't really have a good reason for that. I'm not a Hawaii Turo host, and as far as my knowledge of Hawaii and Turo, it's relatively limited. Of course, I know how the Turo platform operates in Hawaii. I've done market reports for Turo hosts in Hawaii, so I know of the market quite well. But as far as legislature goes within the state of Hawaii, I definitely don't pay particularly close attention to it because I'm a Texan native myself. But the other day, I was reading an article about this bill, and I went onto YouTube to see what some of the other Turo hosts were saying, and I couldn't find a single video of this topic, which was quite surprising. So I thought to myself that maybe there's a lot of people that don't know that this is going on, and maybe this video would be valuable to not only the Turo hosts in Hawaii, but also the Turo hosts around the entire country. So let me dig into my computer and let me actually show you the bill itself. It's pretty short, so we'll be able to go through the entire thing. So you can see here that at the top, it says relating to peer-to-peer car sharing. It says be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Hawaii. Chapter 291C of Hawaii Revised Statutes is amended by adding a new section to Part 12 to be appropriately designated and to read as followed. So what this first chapter is saying is that this piece of the puzzle, this like one piece of legislature, will be added to a larger section of this piece of legislature. So it says 291C, peer-to-peer car sharing prohibited. No person shall operate, use, or control a peer-to-peer car sharing program in the state. For the purpose of this section, peer-to-peer car sharing program means a business platform that connects vehicle owners with drivers to enable the sharing of vehicles for financial consideration. Peer-to-peer car sharing program does not mean lesser as defined in section 437D/3. Peer-to-peer car sharing program is not a car sharing organization. It then says section 2, new statutory material is underscored. Section 3, this act shall take effect upon its approval. It then says that there's different descriptions, prohibits any person from operating, using, or controlling peer-to-peer car sharing programs in the state. So whenever it comes to legislation, this is pretty clear cut, pretty simple, and it's saying that no peer-to-peer car sharing program is to be operated within the state in any way, shape, or form. So we're talking about Turo, Get Around, Hire Car, Avail. I'm not sure if all of those programs were in Hawaii to begin with, but if they had interest in expanding into Hawaii, they would not be able to, and if they were already in Hawaii, they would have to cease operations immediately. Now, this is not the first time that the government in Hawaii has gone after peer-to-peer sharing. Airbnb was kind of the first one to fall victim to this. For example, the state of Hawaii limits the amount of short-term rentals that there can be within the state. There's also a lot of taxes that these Airbnb owners have to pay, and there's also strict rules about not abiding to this either. There's also been different propositions of implementing some sort of lottery system. I know that specifically in Oahu, there's been discussions of implementing this lottery where Airbnb or short-term property owners would enter this lottery and they would only be able to operate their short-term rental property as a short-term rental as long as they won this lottery system. And this was greeted with a bunch of pushback because logistically, a lottery system just wouldn't work with this type of business model. Now, whenever it comes to why Hawaii wants to ban peer-to-peer car sharing platforms like Turo, there are a few reasons for this. And I think that some of them are a little bit justified, though I think that they're overlooking a lot of other aspects to the problems as well. And I think that some of them are just frivolous and greedy. Now, the first and I think the most valid reason to look at banning Turo comes down to the over-tourism. There has been over-tourism in Hawaii for decades, and it's definitely taking its toll on the island, the climate, the environment, the people of Hawaii. So it does make sense that Hawaii would look at ways to limit that. And limiting the access of rental cars is definitely one of those ways. If somebody is looking to go to Hawaii for vacation, but they don't have access to any sort of vehicle or transportation, at least at an affordable rate, that may make them second guess going to Hawaii at all. But on the flip side, I think that you could also look at this exact same problem and say, well, why aren't they limiting Hertz, Avis, Enterprise, and all of these other corporations? And I think that that's a very valid question. A second issue that has been stated is parking problems, specifically at airports. Now, airports in Turo have kind of had a love-hate relationship for a very, very long time. Turo hosts love airports because a lot of business comes from airports, and there are a lot of hosts out there that feel as though they wouldn't be able to operate successfully without an airport. But on the other hand, I believe that airports are probably one of the biggest friction points for Turo because of the fact that there's a lot of rules, regulations, and pushback from airports. Now, whenever you go to an airport and you see like a Hertz, an Avis, an Enterprise, these types of kiosks, these types of businesses that you see within airports or on airport property, they're not free. These rental car agencies have paid a massive, massive price to be located within an airport and thus have a constant flow of customers. But whenever we talk about Turo, the same thing isn't happening. Turo hosts aren't paying a massive fee to do business out of an airport. And as a result, there has been pushback from these rental car agencies whenever they found out that hosts were doing this. And as a result, some airports have banned Turo, others offer limited amounts of permits that you could potentially have access to, and other airports will ticket and fine you if they find out that you're doing business at an airport. That's why oftentimes whenever you see a Turo host doing business at an airport, it's either something that is technically off airport property or it's something that is very under the table. And this is becoming a problem at Hawaii airports, specifically with parking, but not only at airports, but also around the entire island. This is also causing an issue for an already overpopulated area wherever people are wanting to find parking and they're not able to because a Turo host has taken them all. But honestly, the biggest reason why Hawaii is looking to do this, and I think that all of the other reasons listed in this video are just kind of fluff. It comes down to taxes and it comes down to making money. Whenever traditional rental car agencies do business in Hawaii, they have to pay a hefty tax in order to do that. And as a result, Hawaii makes money by having these rental car agencies operate there. But that same exact tax structure doesn't exist in the peer-to-peer car sharing space. And so exactly what Hawaii has done with Airbnbs, where they allow Airbnbs to operate on a limited basis, but you better expect a hefty tax bill because of that. I believe that the same thing is looking to be done with Turo. They're not necessarily looking to ban Turo, but they're trying to introduce a way to tax Turo hosts. At least that's what I think, and it seems as though that's what the author of this bill also thinks, because in an interview, he reiterated the same thought process. In an interview with State Representative Sean Quinlan, he stated, when people go to Enterprise or Hertz and they rent a car, they're paying a rental car surcharge with all sorts of fees. We then use those tax dollars to improve on our infrastructure. When they go to Turo, we're simply not getting that. He then goes on to say that he does not think that this bill is going to pass in its current form and that he hopes it opens the dialogue of regulation and taxation whenever it comes to Turo. Turo did make a statement in response to this, and their statement is as follows. Help keep Turo in Hawaii, said Turo. If passed, this unfair law would forbid peer-to-peer platforms like Turo from operating in the state, eliminating economic opportunity for Hawaii residents who share their cars with neighbors and visitors alike to make ends meet. The Hawaii peer-to-peer car sharing community has played a key role during the pandemic by providing a more cost-effective option than traditional rental car companies with sky-high prices and very limited supply. Our guest community who uses peer-to-peer car sharing to get around town or visit the islands would be left without an economical choice when seeking a mobility solution. Turo then continued, we are hoping that Hawaii legislatures will see this bill for what it is, a blatant attempt at stifling innovation, economic opportunity, and consumer choice for people in the Aloha State. Now, I 100% agree with Turo on this. This is a move to stifle innovation, to limit access to an affordable mode of transportation, and it's simply a way to just get more tax money for the government. I believe that if the real issue is tourism, Hawaii would limit hotels, they would limit rental cars, they wouldn't just target peer-to-peer car sharing. I believe that if parking was an issue, they would hone in on giving Turo hosts parking tickets and creating explicit rules on public roads that you can't park there, which isn't the case currently. And I believe that if it was an issue with airports specifically, then the Hawaii government would work with airports and with Turo to try to develop an efficient permitting process. But the reality is that none of these things are happening. In fact, there has been accounts from Turo directly that Hawaii airports have not been working with Turo and trying to get permits, and they've actually been denying Turo and they haven't been working with them at all. So it seems as though the issue here isn't any of these things that have been cited as reasons behind this ban, but it really is just an issue of a revenue stream for the Hawaii government. Now, honestly, I tend to agree with State Representative Sean Quinlan. I don't think that this will pass in its current form, but I do think it will accomplish his goal of opening this discussion up to more dialogue around the idea of taxing Turo hosts, which I am, of course, not for in any way, shape, or form. But if this was to theoretically pass, I think that it would set a very, very dangerous precedent for Turo hosts. What we don't need as a Turo community is for individual states nitpicking the Turo business model and figuring out ways that they can either end it or profit from it. Now, Turo is already banned in the state of New York, but even if Hawaii was to ban Turo, I don't see it catching on like mainstream throughout the country. Like many things in the United States, each state will have to decide, and there will be some states, and there are some states that are much more receptive of things like Turo and things like the gig economy and things like peer-to-peer car sharing versus other states. And I think that you could even look at it through an even smaller lens and say certain cities may regulate differently. Overall, if you are somebody that is in the other 49 states of the United States, I don't think that this is something to be concerned about, but I definitely think that this is something to keep an eye on. If you're a Turo host in the state of Hawaii, I think that it's something to be a little concerned about. I don't think that this will pass in its current form, but I definitely think it's something to be aware of, and I think it's something to keep in your back pocket as you plan for the future. As far as what you can do to prevent this from happening, make sure to call your legislatures. This is something that I know I learned, and I think a lot of people in the United States learned during the pandemic. Calling your state legislatures works. Calling the people that you elected into government works. So make sure that you call your state representatives, your city representatives. Make sure you call anybody in a position of power and let them know that you unequivocally do not agree with what they're doing, and you as a voter will not vote for them in the upcoming election if they vote in favor of this bill. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some valuable insight into what's currently going on with Turo and Hawaii. If you guys have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And also, if you guys are a Hawaii Turo host and you have any information on this, I would love to hear it. I know that Turo has sent out some emails specifically to Hawaii Turo hosts. If you guys have any insight on that, I would love to hear it. So leave a comment or send me a message on Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it. And like always, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and make sure to hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.